This presentation is being delivered with the hope that it might aid informed decision making concerning the future of the Fire and Rescue Service in Essex, Southend and Thurrock. It is highly abridged, and further information can be found in both the Essex FBU Statistical Response and the Aids to an Open and Transparent Dialogue presentation. The Essex IRMP consultation document is driven by a set of statistics and assumptions based upon them. In the FBU's original response, the service's key statistics are examined, and throughout the IRMP it appears that figures have been selected and then carefully presented to demonstrate the highest reductions possible to support an argument for the justification of a predetermined outcome, rather than objectively to support a transparent, balanced discussion regarding the future of the Fire and Rescue Service in Essex. Even the figures attributed to non-fatal fire casualties are in fact a subsection relating to those requiring hospital treatment, the actual reduction in non-fatal fire casualties being markedly lower. Having selected their figures in this manner, the service failed to evidence any tight correlations between them, and indeed resulted to dismissing the lack of change in fatalities as showing no clear pattern or trend. When looked at objectively, however, some important patterns and trends do become clear. Government reports highlight that dwelling fires consistently account for the vast majority of total fire casualties. Across the same period, national fire prevention and protection strategies have failed to reduce either the casualty or fatality rates for dwelling fires. Whilst this situation continues, then dwelling fires are the key indicator with regards to fire casualties and deaths. However, the service failed to address these facts in their IRMP. Having seen that the proportion of fire deaths that occur in dwelling fires has remained constant, along with both the casualty and fatality rates remaining stable, it should be of no surprise that there is a clear and tight correlation between the reduction in dwelling fires and those seen for deaths and casualties nationally. Unfortunately, the last decade has not witnessed the same reductions in Essex. However, simply looking at a snapshot percentage change can be easily distorted by yearly fluctuations. We are better served to investigate if there's a pattern or trend across the period. Having seen the national correlations, it is entirely consistent then that the lack of reduction in dwelling fires witnessed in Essex has also resulted in a failure to achieve a downward trend for either fire casualties or indeed fatalities, both of which have remained consistent and are cause for serious concern, standing in stark contrast to the downward trends nationally. As a result, the Essex population's requirement for their fire and rescue service to respond to dwelling fires and prevent casualties and fatalities has not been reduced. Along with the failings of national prevention and protection strategies, Essex have also failed to produce a downward trend in the number of dwelling fires. It is clear from the government reports used in the production of their IRMP that Essex Fire and Rescue Service lags far behind in reducing numbers of dwelling fires. In fact, across the previous decade, Essex had recorded the second worst performance nationally and the worst across the last 5 years. The clear and consistent correlation between dwelling fires, casualties and deaths, in conjunction with the failure to reduce dwelling fires, explains the disappointing fire death and casualty numbers in Essex, which were dismissed as having no clear pattern or trend. In their IRMP, the service appeared to justify a reduction in emergency response based upon national trends rather than the reality being faced by the people of Essex. Both the service in their IRMP and a government commissioned report inform us that a delay from moment of ignition to fire and rescue intervention drastically increases fatality rates. So, the most important factors in reducing fire casualties and fatalities lie in both reducing the number of dwelling fires that occur and shortening the total emergency response time when they do. The figures presented by the service display a failure to meet their own response time standards for each of the previous 5 years. In this period, Essex also witnessed an increase in dwelling fires, casualties and deaths, in stark contrast to the decline seen nationally. Taking the importance of response times and against the backdrop of flatlining dwelling fire and casualty numbers, the service's proposed solution to these failures is a 3-minute 45-second or 38% worsening of emergency response standards. This is based, after correcting for a new method of timing, on the only comparable target, which is that of the 90% target time of 15 minutes. In their IRMP, the service appeared to justify the lengthening of response standards on national trends rather than local ones, and a spurious relationship examining the FBU's original response. It is reported that 88% of dwellings have at least one working smoke alarm, and in the most recent year's figures, the fatality rate in dwelling fires where smoke alarms raised the alarm was half of that where smoke alarms were either absent or did not raise the alarm. However, the 2/3 of dwelling fires where smoke alarms were present were still responsible for 3/5 of fatalities and 3/4 of non-fatal casualties. These figures are not as successful as one would hope. Smoke alarms either did not operate or failed to raise the alarm in 43% of cases. However, the DCLG highlight a wide difference in performance between battery-powered alarms like those fitted by Essex Fire and Rescue Service and mains-powered ones, with 2/5 of all battery-powered smoke alarms failing, twice the rate of those that were mains-powered. Despite under 2/5 of accidental dwelling fires originating in living rooms or bedrooms, these account for nearly 3/4 of accidental dwelling fire fatalities, with fatality rates of 30 and 21 per 1,000 fires respectively, in contrast to 2 in every 1,000 for kitchen fires. In an attempt to reduce these casualty and fatality rates, rather than the proposed continuation of previous strategies, perhaps we should be considering a new direction. These could include utilising different types of smoke alarm, locating them in different or additional rooms, utilising methods of linked alarms, or utilising different methods of raising the alarm, for example, automated fire alarms. Since the release of both the IRMP and the statistical response, there has been both a New Year's figures and a press response from the service. Rather than addressing any of the serious and legitimate concerns raised, or explaining on what evidence they conclude that the continuation of current fire safety initiatives in conjunction with slower response time standards would be improving community safety, the press reported that fire bosses accused a union of distorting casualty statistics. The service released a table of standalone figures to support their statement. Neither the service nor the FBU chose to highlight accidental dwelling fires previously, and any reasonable person will realise all fires, whether started accidentally or otherwise, can and do kill and injure people. As such, accidental dwelling fires are merely a subsection of the important dwelling fire statistics, and not relevant when discussing fire response. Their usefulness is when discussing fire prevention. Throughout the original response, it was highlighted that yearly fluctuations rendered certain methods of viewing statistics as unreliable on their own. Last year's fluctuation in fire deaths meant that there was no change in Essex from 10 years previous. This was dismissed in the IRMP by the service stating that there was no clear pattern or trend. However, this year there was a favourable fluctuation in the number of fire deaths in Essex, which has resulted in the no clear pattern or trend being replaced by an irrefutable fact within a matter of 6 weeks. As the service brought these figures into the public domain, it may be worth considering them for a moment. Whilst neither the service nor the FBU chose to just present a table of nominal values previously, it is noted that this may be the most favourable way in which to present the numbers, drawing as much attention to last year's fluctuation in fire deaths, while substantially lowering the previous year's figures. Why did the service choose not to take a snapshot of the 10-year change as in their consultation document? And having decided to just view the last 5 years, why did the service choose not to represent the figures as a percentage change as they had previously? Why didn't the service use their preferred subsection from the consultation document of hospital non-fatal casualties? However, even though these snapshot percentage changes are handy when used to describe witnessed trends, As pointed out, they can be heavily affected by yearly fluctuations and don't necessarily represent actual trends. There will be many factors affecting these figures, which show a 6% increase in accidental dwelling fires, one of which we feel could well be the 6% increase in the population of Essex mentioned in the IRMP. However, the service don't highlight this as a risk that requires mitigation, and having done so, cannot then reasonably use per capita figures and hence the population increase to defend these results without accepting that the population increase in Essex represents an increased risk. The press stated that the service insists the statistics speak for themselves. We're in agreement with this statement. Apparently, the service went on to state that they were perfectly happy for people to look at these figures and draw their own conclusions. We also feel this would be helpful for the consultation, as up until this point, neither the public nor the Fire Authority have been presented with this opportunity. By utilising spurious relationships and national trends, rather than the key indicators, correlations and local trends, the service appear to be proposing offsetting both a slower and diminished emergency response capability with prevention and protection strategies that have a questionable efficacy, whilst still claiming that they are leading the way to a safer Essex. In their IRMP, the service have asked several leading and closed questions without attempting to ensure full understanding. Whether it be with their employees, the Fire Authority or the public, the service should ensure that when being asked questions, all parties should be able to make informed decisions. This can only be achieved by full disclosure of both all relevant statistics and examples of foreseeable possible outcomes. All proposals or claims should be evidence-based and open to scrutiny, and each proposal should clearly set out all the relevant pros and cons, including possible increased numbers of casualties and loss of property. This is a practice carried out in other fire and rescue services, Norfolk for example. As the underlying statistics and reasoning utilised in the IRMP consultation document are critically flawed, and the proposals and questions featured do not facilitate informed decision making, the results emanating from it cannot therefore be reasonably used in formulating future options. Either the options put forward in the next phase of this process must be diverse in strategic direction and presented in such a manner as to allow an informed decision-making process independent of this consultation, or the consultation must surely be recommissioned. If it is the case that the service are not deliberately selecting statistics purely to justify a predetermined outcome, and if the service continue to disagree with the DCLG statistics, or indeed if they feel that it is the FBU who do not understand them, then even though it would have been advisable to consult with the FBU at the earliest opportunity during the construction of the IRMP, as required by the national framework, it would probably be worthwhile for the FBU and service management to have an open, inclusive and free discussion with members of the Fire Authority to arrive at a consensus with regards to the relevant statistics to be considered whilst consulting on the IRMP and during the development of future options.